All right.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but tonight we are going to be starting a totally different month where we have the theme of John Candy. So, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie that you have in store for us since you'll be hosting tonight?
All right. So I have a lovely little gem here tonight called The Great Outdoors, a movie of 1988 directed by Howard Deutch, starring Dan Aykroyd and John Candy, but also written by John Hughes. So, fun stuff right there. Essentially, this movie is about a nice family man taking his family out to the woods where his family before him used to go to relive all those past lovely memories and bond. Unfortunately, his brother-in-law has other ideas as he decides to crash their little party in the woods. So let's go ahead and see all the people who have seen this movie many times, I'm sure. So, Dave, is this your first time watching The Great Outdoors?
No, this is definitely not my first time watching The Great Outdoors. In fact, it was a family film that was definitely watched in my household, and I've seen it multiple times. And I have to say I've seen it myself multiple times. And it's a good film, especially. I would have to say, as far as like modern comedy, to me, this is modern. This was my favorite film for a time. Before I figured out that Killer Clowns from Outer Space was my favorite film. But John Candy is a phenomenal actor. To me, he was kind of a mixed bag at times, but I do know that he was a relatively thick man and thick-skinned, especially for this movie. I thought, and I think the comedy plays really well. I think that this is a very relatable family, and the situations that happen in here are kind of moralistic. So, to me, this is a very good film.
All right. So next up, let's see here. We have Dane. Was this your first experience watching The Great Outdoors?
It most certainly was, I have to say. Now, you can definitely tell that this was a John Hughes script. There are I've noticed that there are basically three specific eras of John Hughes. There's the teen movies, there's the movies like this that are kind of the broad comedies that are, you could call them family films, or I would just call them movies about families, which is not necessarily the same thing. But I'm thinking of National Lampoon's Vacation and this and Christmas Vacation, stuff like that. And then there was the Home Alone and its various clones, so those are the three distinct eras of John Hughes, with some exceptions thrown in here and there. There was stuff like Made in Manhattan and She's Having a Baby, stuff like that. But those are three, teen movie John Hughes the best, obviously. And then probably this era would be second, and then the Home Alone and the various clones would be least. But that being said, this kind of film falls in line with National Lampoon's Vacation, which I liked a lot more when I was younger, and then Christmas Vacation, which I saw kind of later in life. And I think that these kinds of films they must speak to a specific generation. I assume it's perhaps people that did more like outdoorsy kind of camping things with their families on a more regular basis, which is not to say that I didn't do things like that, but it was just not quite as I don't have quite the same reverence for that sort of thing in the way that like Clark Griswold or John Candy's characters seem to, because they're all trying to recapture their own youth, which would have been, I assume, like the 50s, just given the time
Boomers.
period. Yeah, so it's definitely boomer humor, as they call it. And I have plenty of appreciation for that sort of thing because of like I love Airplane. I love a lot of like movies that have come to be associated with boomer humor. Um, but it's like I think with this one, it does sort of depend on you having something of a frame of reference with that. That sort of importance on let's go here and try to recapture my youth with my family and that sort of thing. Which I'm sure that is more universal than what I'm making it sound like, but it seems to be so specific for assume for people of that generation, and at least through the lens of John Hughes, because he's talked about that same feeling multiple times across multiple films, so it must obviously strike a chord. I think for me, it doesn't quite so much, and it also didn't help that this one, like, because say what you want with Vacation or Christmas Vacation, like, and I have my issues with both of those, but I think that they handled that type of film better than this did, because like I think the pacing of the jokes, like the jokes are telegraphed way too much. Like you can really tell what's gonna come and when. They're kind of predictable. I don't think it's structured especially well, just because of like the stakes are not all that. I don't know. It just seems like there's not a whole lot at stake. I give John Candy credit for playing the straight man in a like, and I mentioned in the chat before, like I loved him in Cool Runnings, because he that was a comedy, but it had a lot of drama in it as well, and he mostly played to the drama, and he did it beautifully. This one, he's playing more of the straight man, and yeah, I give him credit for doing that. I do think it's better when he gets to let loose a little bit more, but I give him credit for trying something different. Uh, just on the whole, I don't know. It just didn't really work for me. This isn't really my kind of film. I think it's totally for personal reasons, but this is kind of assuming that you have that kind of upbringing or that kind of desire to get back to state that uh, a state of happiness or a state of nostalgia that I think is very specific to a certain family type or a certain generation that I don't really have. And it's one of those things where like usually I do not relate to the quote unquote relatable family. I usually relate to the weirdos and the you know people that don't typically get movies made about them, or fuck, I related more to like the Addams Family. Like I'm thinking like Addams Family Values when they go to camp and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm more like that. But so this wasn't really for me, but I could see why it would have a wide appeal. And but I will contest that I think out of the movies like this, I would probably put the original National Lampoon's Vacation at the top of that era of John Hughes, and that type of get the family together and recapture the vacationing / adventuring spirit from what I assume was the 50s.
All right, let's move on to Roger. Is this your first time watching The Great Outdoors?
Yes, it is. Matter of fact, I must admit, I'm not very experienced in watching movies, and comedies is one of the places where I'm really soft at. I did take the liberty of looking at, because Dane had a pretty good idea of talking about some of the past movies. Kind of looked at a quick glance on it, and one thing I did like, was, a couple other movies I really liked was Ferris Bueller's Day Off is really well done. I had a lot of fun with that. And European Vacation, not so much. Vacation was better, and Christmas. But anyways, what I'm getting at, at least it wasn't the only movie I've seen from this guy. I had a lot of fun with the movie. I have to sometimes one has to let go of the brain for me to enjoy the movie. It doesn't everything has to have logical flow, which this one does not have. It's just a series of skits put together, in a bigger movie. But it doesn't mean this can't be fun. It is a fun movie. I like the bear. It was kind of fun. I like the old coot. I like the kind of like some of the characters had some romance in there, and some of this I thought it'd be sex and more sex and let's talk about sex, but it wasn't quite so much like that. But I must admit, I have to thank you there, SeptumSin, for allowing me to watch the movie because I did like it.
Oh yeah. Thank you for your take. So Forrest, is this your first time with Great Outdoors?
No, it's not. I've seen it a couple of times before this, although I haven't watched as much as other John Candy or Dan Aykroyd movies. I do. I definitely don't relate to that whole, middle-aged parent wanting to recreate their, like Dan. I don't really relate to that whole thing with like parents wanting to recreate their youth with their children. I mean, I came from it. I'm come from an immigrant family, so.
Yeah,
I just didn't have that. Although I do have experiences of like going on like family road trips to like Idaho or the Grand Canyon growing up.
Well, but you know what I'm trying to get at, though. It's like that's a very specific social milieu of a very specific, experience, and it's like if you fall outside of that for whatever reason, then it's kind of maybe not completely lost on you, but you don't have quite that sense of like universality that they're trying to go for.
Yeah. Although I'd still say, so even though it's probably one of the Candy and Aykroyd movies to me it's not as beloved as their other as say Spaceballs or Ghostbusters. I still think it's still a good solid family comedy or comedy about a family. Actually, I do Dave, because this movie is supposed to be set in Wisconsin. Dave, but it was filmed in L.A. Dave, do you feel like does this movie at all scream Wisconsin to you?
I know that it was supposed to be filmed in Wisconsin, but parts of it are, especially the Paul Bunyan scenes, because there is a Paul Bunyan's in Wisconsin Dells, but they definitely do not have an old 69er.
Too bad.
Well, actually, according to
this definitely screams Chicago because everything John Hughes screams Chicago.
Well, the trivia that I read on this said that it was mostly California, that they really that the bar, the lake, it was all in and around Bass Lake, California, but there might have been a few. But like you said, Dave, there's apparently Paul Bunyan's Cook Shanty. Apparently is there, but they don't have the 69er or 96er. I mean,
well, Jake. Well, while we're on there, is this your first time seeing The Great Outdoors?
Well, it's not because you showed it to me, but it's this is a weird one for me because growing up, I was a big John Candy fan. I loved a lot of his stuff. I was a big Dan Aykroyd fan, and I think as a rule with our family we were, and we saw this. You see this the famous poster of the Aykroyd with the fishing pole that must have been one hell of a fishing pole to hold up John Candy that well. I don't know. It's and then you got that raccoon eating out the tackle box behind him. That was that's a great poster. It really is. But it's one that I remember that. And it's like, and it baffles me that we never checked this out. I don't know why. It's like it just never happened. And I actually, when we watched it for this, I watched it with some of my family, and they were like, yeah, I don't remember this movie. And I'm like, how did we miss it? I was there. I knew about it. But, and I did not, I'm a bad child of the 80s. I did not grow up. I think, honestly, I don't even know at what point I became aware of who John Hughes was. I did not grow up on his films, Home Alone and Christmas Vacation being probably the main exceptions. The ones he actually directed, I think I was introduced to Ferris Bueller in high school, and that was probably the first, there's still several I haven't seen. And we need to cover some of them on here, actually.
I at least grew up with Ferris Bueller and Breakfast Club.
I've never seen Breakfast Club.
Oh, it's fantastic. I grew up with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I saw that when I was very young, but amazingly enough, I did not watch Christmas Vacation until later. I didn't watch Home Alone until later. But I did.
Now
until a few years ago.
The comparisons to Christmas Vacation, for example, or the Vacation series, there is definitely a vacation vibe. I do agree with that. There is definitely a vacation vibe. Dan Aykroyd kind of fills the Cousin Eddie role in here, although he's a lot more articulate and probably more. He appears to be more successful at life than Cousin Eddie could ever hope to be.
Appears to be.
Yes, appears to be. But I will say this, even though they film much of the same archetypal role, you can't get much different between Chet Ripley and Clark Griswold, because Clark Griswold's an ass. There's no two ways about it.
Well,
but Ripley is.
I like John Candy in this. I like his character. I want to fucking kill Clark Griswold. I really do.
Actually, that's one thing that separates what separates this movie from the vacation movies is that you've got two lovable leads in Candy and Aykroyd.
I don't know. I found Aykroyd to be. I mean, I like him as he's a great foil in this film, and he is like that. He can play obnoxious, and he is obnoxious here. I do not care for his character here, but his role in the film, he's a great foil. And when he is finally humbled toward the end, it plays well. It does play well.
By the way, spoilers. Spoilers.
Yes, spoilers. Yes.
It's a slightly old film, but hey, you never know.
like the scene where the two of them are sitting there looking at the lake, and Roman asks Chet what he sees. And Chet's like, well, I see trees, I see a lake. And then he goes on this long rant. And I'm sitting there going, you are everything that's wrong with this world. Shut up now. And let's hear more from the good guy. But anyway.
He plays it very over the top.
He does.
Which you think is an acting choice on Aykroyd's part, which it technically is, but you also, again, spoilers, it's also part of his facade, that he's trying to keep up appearances.
And he could have been a much...
totally, he's totally like a Reagan-era, cartoon.
Almost. Like, he could, like I said, if he played it a little straighter, he could have almost been a what's his name? Patrick Bateman, one of his friends, maybe. I do want to go ahead and just. I know Brandon's trying to move along, and I just want to wrap up my impression of the film, which is that it is a film that I enjoyed when I finally saw it. I was a little underwhelmed because I'd kind of built it up in my mind over the years, and then when I saw it again. I had set the bar lower. I feel like it does have really good rewatch value, and I could see how it's a sentimental favorite for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like I could see how if you grew up with it, you'd love it, and if you didn't, you could grow to love it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, I've probably watched this one the most out of anybody here, because I was introduced to this on HBO when it first came out, when my father taped it, and we had a VCR. I liked this movie so much, I watched it before bed every night from age, I think, 10 to age 14. And every night. And I had gotten to the point where I had it so well known that I could actually play it in my head to watch it as I did not have it to play. I actually knew all the lines. I had the whole thing by heart memorized.
Was this your antidote to crime?
Well, it's very different than some of the stuff my father would normally like. This is not. This was one. I don't know who introduced me to this, because it seems like one that my father would have liked more than my mother, because my mother does not like a lot of the comedies that use that sort of slapstick humor. Doesn't care much. She would not. She did not like Stooge Mania, as you saw, because she made sure she left the room. Like that. She didn't like any of the vacation movies or any of that, because she doesn't like that wanton destruction slapstick.
Yeah.
So
there was less wanton destruction here than in a typical Griswold adventure.
She was much more tolerant of this one than the National Lampoon's ones. She liked this one better, but I think part of it was the raccoons.
Yeah. Well, this movie pulls a lot of punches when it comes to a lot of the kinds of jokes, like especially the wanton destruction and also just the interplay of the characters. It pulls a lot of punches where it doesn't need to, except there are certain things about it that stuck out. The raccoons, honestly, when I saw the raccoons doing their thing, I was like, why am I not watching this movie? I want to see a bunch of raccoons that like swear at each other and want to terrorize a family and that kind of stuff. So I want to see that movie. And then same with the story.
Okay, Dane. We got several people here involved in movie production and whatever. So when Disney inevitably does their live-action remake of Aristocats, maybe we need to come up with a way to make a raccoon movie to be the answer to that one.
By the way, is it just me?
I like the. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just. With the raccoons, this is just kind of crossed my mind while watching the movie. So this movie is basically a retread of National Lampoon's Vacation. But does anyone get the feeling that these raccoons are basically a retread of the Gopher from Caddyshack?
A little bit.
Didn't talk. I mean,
he was a good dancer.
Not with the subtitles, but like. I mean, but it is kind of a similar idea. You're on that right path. But these characters, the raccoons, they were the best part by far. I am with you, Jake. We ought to write out as like I'm thinking almost like raccoons meet like something completely batshit, like Meet the Feebles or something, like something that starts off really cutesy and then gets insane. That would be great.
Kind of like that raccoon movie that they already made, Pompoko.
So, as to wrap up my first impressions of it, I really liked this movie as a child, and I can understand as an adult. I mean, it's been years since I've come back to it. I mean, any film that you've watched probably over 600 times tends to.
Oh boy.
Somebody eating some cereal or something. But
sounds like popcorn.
Hey, perfect for a movie. But with that being said,
600 times.
Yes, 66 times.
So, have you seen this more than Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1?
Yeah, actually, History of the World Part 1 took over for this as my favorite film when I turned about 14-ish to 15-ish. But I watched this a lot as a child, and I mean, again, I can understand if some people are not as like enchanted by it as I am, because again, sometimes it takes a lot of nostalgia. Um,
Mhm.
with this one in particular, though, I can say to me, I don't consider it quite the same analysis that you have with it, Dane. I think that a lot of it is in human nature that they want to share something that brought them joy with others. Now, you can say in a family, you could take that and apply it to a family that this brought me a lot of joy, and I want my children to feel that joy. If I like when I have a movie I love, I try to get Kim to watch because I want her to feel the same amount of joy that I did when I watched that film. Or I show a film to a friend because I think they're going to really love this film, and I want them to feel that same reaction. And when they do feel that, you get that extra boost. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that might be better to apply
Oh, that
to
makes
you.
sense.
I mean,
No,
has anybody else ever felt like that you'd want to share something with somebody so they could also get some of that feeling that you did?
yeah.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
that's a perfectly
It's like if
legitimate.
you had a if you had a legacy, if you had a legacy to give to the next generation to pass down from your father to your son. This is that type of a movie. To me, this is kind of a good Father's Day a movie as
Oh,
well.
definitely.
Yeah.
Because I love the relationship that John Candy's character has with his son in here, where he takes him out in the boat and he gives him something that his father gave to him before, and as well as that like story. To me, a good family vacation is nothing without a good a fucked up story, like to me, half of my family did go camping. I did go hunting when I was a kid. We would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, walk like 4 miles down the road just to find the fucking camping spot, and then walk like 2 miles in. Of course, I would be falling asleep, and my uncle would pass by and be like, "Hey, there's your cousin."
And don't forget the leeches that you had to use to shoot people with.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I think you're onto something, Brandon. With the you want to share. I mean, you're right that that's a very common experience with humanity in general. That you want to bring people into a happy memory or a happy joy or this or that. Like my neighbor and I have movie night every night where we show each other a movie that like meant something to us or something. And I showed my neighbor City Lights, which is my favorite film of all time, and something that I didn't see until college, and obviously I couldn't have seen it when it came out because it was 1931. But still, as I get that same feeling there, and also just any film that I show in that kind of setting, it's like I want that kind of connection point. And I guess what I'm saying is more so like because of how it manifests in the other John Hughes scripted, family vacation type of movies that he's done. It does seem like it takes on a very specific, like it speaks to a very specific, probably it is speaking from the perspective of a very specific generation, but it does have universality if your family does match a lot of those kinds of models, for what's important to them and that sort of stuff. Because, like we mentioned before, there's a Cousin Eddie equivalent. There's the nostalgic, dreamer that wants to recapture his youth or whatever. Again, but the difference is that John Candy is likable here, whereas Clark Griswold is despicable.
Well, why don't we go ahead and then get started into it? One of the things I think I'm going to do is I'm going to shake it up, and I'm going to hit the main characters first, and then we'll dive into the plot. Because you're pretty much showing the main characters from the get-go. And we were talking about, and y'all were already talking about Roman as we went on there. Roman Craig, who is Chet's brother-in-law. And he is a businessman of sorts, an investor, a fund manager, and he's of course doing that. You know, when I saw him, I was reminded of my uncle, believe it or not, because they had very similar. They're very similar in many ways. I'm not going to go into depth because I don't know if anybody in the family would be listening to this, but. You know, I mean, Jake, you've met my uncle. Could you see a similarity in there?
Based on my limited interactions, maybe. I'm not sure I'd be expert on that, but
yeah, you're the only one I can think of here that's met him. But that guy, he's obviously, you know, the whole. I mean, the '80s greed is good type guy. But what did y'all think? Let's hear from, of course, some other people, because I know that both you, Jake, and Dane talked a bit about him. But how about the rest of y'all? What were y'all thoughts about Roman?
Roman is kind of a city slicker. He knows his well. We think he knows his business when he first comes. And the whole thing is, if you haven't seen this film beforehand, he passes himself off as this like well-to-do businessman who has done really well for himself, and just is that annoying brother-in-law that just there's one in every family.
Right.
He just annoyingly crashes every private event that you ever have, and obviously this is like a yearly vacation that this family goes on, and finally they get some alone time to themselves. Of course, he's Candy's character, he's getting down to the dirty grease shit, in the fucking kitchen when he shows up. So of course, this is gonna start, the whole shebang,
Solana the Woods Temptress with Horny the Bear, Smokey's cousin.
and to be honest, I actually think that Candy's character in here with his wife is actually cute. I think that they are the best outdoorsy couple that you could probably put on screen, because he is like the lovable beer guzzling Norm. And she is like she's actually not that bad looking for a woman of her stature. She's a good looking homebody. So,
Stephanie Farsi has always been a bit of a lucker when she gets into her roles, especially back then in the '80s.
But I get the distinct impression that there's something oily about Roman,
kind of greasy.
Even at the get-go. Yeah, greasy. Yeah, and it's just the way that he presents himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anybody else want to get on? Roger, Forrest?
I definitely get a strong.
Sure.
I definitely get a very strong, kind of like a used car salesman vibe from him.
Yeah.
Well, definitely a salesperson. He wants to sell something and he wants to sell an opportunity. But my first impression of him that he was going to be some sort of fop. He was in fop in disguise. He comes out with his Mercedes, rich speak. He knows everything, and now he's just hanging out with his little brother, kind of like situation. But not basically, I don't think he was a bad character. I just think he was simply there just to annoy John Candy. That's plain and simple.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was saying. No, go ahead, Roger.
No, that was it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely got like a car, like a bit of your one part used car salesman, but also one part very insecure.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
About his like his state in life.
I love that scene where he's sitting in the shower. He's like, "How come Chet's kids look at him like he's Zeus, and my kids look at me like I'm a yard tool in the racketeers?"
And he scratches in his butt while they're laughing their ass off.
Now, granted, they look at most things that way.
Well, yeah, they're basically. You can tell that that John Hughes was doing a Shining ripoff with those kids.
Yeah.
You guys might find this weird, but like, okay, so I like that line quite a bit about Zeus versus the Sears thing. I like that. That's very, very telling of his character. I mean, again, this is not John Hughes's best script by any means, but it also does have those flashes of brilliance, like that. But like, but something that I thought was an appropriate choice on Dan Aykroyd's part because it shows just what a empty vacuum of a person he is, at least at that juncture. Is that so? When he tries to communicate some degree of comfort to his two girls, the way that he delivers that and the way it's written, like, because keep in mind, Dan Aykroyd played Nixon on SNL a few times back in the early days of SNL.
Mm-hmm.
But like the way that he plays it is almost like he's a White House press secretary who is secretly a pedophile. That's kind of the way he plays it. And the girls kind of have that, like, almost like 1,000-yard stare. Like but they're that way with everything, like we said.
Yeah.
Like not just with him. They do look kind of dead-eyed at everything, but partially it's because I'm sure that they're used to having a father who just doesn't give them much, so they don't really give a whole lot to the world themselves, and that's why they have that dead-eyed look, But it's just that whole scene. I remember I was like, geez, this guy really could be like, in like a Reagan administration, like press secretary type role. But again, he just comes across as so unnatural and so uncomfortable in his own skin when he's trying to be a father, which is of course the point. But I just like that it came across as very specific. Like I could see that characterization in a more serious drama with that kind of backstory.
I got the feeling that Roman, this is like his first time actually being around his daughters at this peculiar age. So of course it's going to be awkward because this might actually be like the first moment where he's actually going to be a father towards them in any way, shape, or form. Because now, okay, he's broke. He's all he's got is the car and the family and whatnot. Now he's stuck with them,
Mm-hmm.
So now he's got to figure out how to conversate with his family. He might not even have like the best relationship with his wife. For that matter,
that's what they said. That's what they said is that sometimes it was like a month before they got into bed together, which is kind of unreal. But he's also probably got several girls on the side or at least wants to, if he's trying to live up to that 80s businessman persona. Which, speaking of which, interesting trivia. So Annette Bening, who you may remember from Brandon's favorite film, American Beauty. This was her film debut, and how appropriate, because her character here actually does kind of echo what her character in American Beauty would be like, except her character there is like a million times worse in terms of like the shallowness and like the trying to keep up appearances and all that stuff. But it's in the same vein, and this was her film debut, so how about that? But it's you could definitely do like a serious drama film about that family, I think, because there's enough ingredients there. And I guess, again, technically talking about Oliver Stone's Wall Street, I guess they kind of did already. But Roman is a great name as a first name. That's a great name for a person. I'm thinking of like Roman from Rosemary's Baby, which is of course directed by Roman Polanski. Which again, regardless of his deeds, that the name Roman's a good name.
Well, does anybody else have anything else on Roman before we move on to Chet?
Good old Chet.
Chet Ripley.
He's very manipulative.
But Chet?
Yes.
I was hearing it.
You mean Roman?
Roman is very manipulative of Chet.
Yes.
Before we get into Chet, he obviously leads Chet into to some bad situations.
So, okay, now one thing I wanted to pose to you all as a group is that Chet Ripley is kind of like supposed to be the everyman, the person that everybody should be able to identify with, the all-around good guy. And just for measure, they like to make sure that they state it several times in the film, just to make sure you get the idea across. Do you feel like John Candy got that idea across as a character?
Yep, all the way. He got completely everything he does.
Yep.
Yeah,
He wants to be goody two shoes. He wants to be the great father. He wants to relive his childhood. He wants to pass on his knowledge to his family, and he has a nice relationship with his wife. He has a very annoying brother. He still hasn't throttled yet.
Mhm.
Yeah, he even has funny ghost stories to tell everybody. So yeah, this guy is just about as average as you could possibly get as a father.
Except when it comes to eating contests.
Oh my god! Yeah, that was pretty impressive. If I must say so myself.
Actually, it's really funny. I'm going over my notes for our Movies Galore viewings and whatnot. And you mentioned the eating contest right at the exact same moment that I landed on the word blood sport.
Actually, did we do Stand By Me on this show? I
Nope,
cannot remember.
we have not.
No, we need to.
That's
a
a
worthy
good
one.
movie.
It's based
But,
on a Stephen King novel.
Yep.
The
And
Body.
it could be, you could say that John Candy's character was lard ass as he grew up.
Yeah.
After he got his revenge.
Not one I've seen in a long time.
That should be a movie, Lard Ass's Revenge.
Also a very good movie, though. Not lard ass, but yeah. But Stand By Me.
I still say that should be a movie, Lard Ass's Revenge, and make it about that character. But make it like a trauma horror movie or something.
Oh, you could have the raccoons as like a co-star.
Yes. Now we're talking. But yeah, I like Chet as a character. I mean, again, this isn't my favorite John Candy role, but I like that he can play the straight man. Again, it's mostly just because the writing's not quite there, but it's also not quite there for really anybody. But he shows that he has that side to him, and he's almost like he's like Kevin James if he were likable, but he kind of fits that bigger guy who's a family man,
Right.
except here
The good-hearted schlub, basically.
Basically,
I would almost say I would compare him to John Goodman.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
As a character.
A little bit.
Because John Goodman has played the everyman before.
Yes.
Oh, he has.
So
But Goodman has played it so successfully that he is a grossly underrated actor with tremendous range.
Yeah.
I think I love John Candy to death, but I don't know that he ever showed a fraction of that range. He showed a lot more range than Kevin James does.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you were to
Yeah.
put them on the scale, John Goodman
Right.
ranks, no pun intended, scale. If you were to
Yeah.
put them on the totem pole, shall we say, then John Candy is way up there at the top by far because he can play the everyman good guy, but he can also play
Goodman.
some. Yeah, but he can also play some really, really terrifying
Oh
characters.
yeah.
I
Like
feel
Oh
like
in
yeah.
most of the Coen Brothers films that he's in, he plays terrifying characters. But then you
Right.
have like John Candy underneath that, and then of course Kevin James at the bottom. But
I think
yeah,
that
I agree with you.
I think
Hmm.
John Candy had a lot of missed opportunities,
Yeah.
especially as time went on. Because if you think about it, at the time that Goodman was about the time that John Candy was doing that, Goodman's most known roles were on Roseanne,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and John Candy was showing some difference in.
Oh, he was.
Actually, I
He
mean, you had
was.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but you also had Canadian Bacon, which is one I feel like is an underrated film, which we'll be
Yeah.
covering.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. I really do think that if he had the right director, like I think if the Coens had slotted him in something like that, I think they could have utilized him
Oh,
and shown a part of him that you
that
wouldn't
would have been
seen normally.
great.
That would have been a dream
It would've
come
been-
true.
Yeah.
But otherwise, anybody else have anything else about Chet?
Well, I like that he. Okay, so yeah, it became kind of a cliche for your standard dad character in movies to have like the dad bod and to do all the stereotypical dad things, and that like the Homer Simpson types that would populate everything from here on in, or from that point on. And you do see some things like that here, but it doesn't feel like it's overly tropey in that respect. Like he still feels like his own character, and I think it's partially because he is tropey insofar as other John Hughes things, because again we've seen that Clark Griswold type of character, except again I contest that he's a much better character than Clark Griswold. He's more in that mold than he is of like the Homer Simpson type, someone that's like irretrievably dumb or irretrievably lazy, and the wife is like the long-suffering wife that's having to shoulder the burden for both of them, that sort of stuff. You don't really get that here, which is really nice. And John Candy was a big guy, but he doesn't really fit a lot of that physical mold that I am seeing in my head, mostly because he was bigger than that, but he had more of his own personality that was not trying to fit into that archetype. So I give him credit for not falling into what would dominate culture from that point forward. And John Candy's just generally a likable person on screen.
So while we move on to the wives, we have, of course, our two lovely ones that, of course, Dave had already talked about. Stephanie Farsi's character, Connie Ripley, which is, of course, Chet's wife, and Annette Bening, which is also talked about as Kate Craig, who is Roman's wife. And they are an interesting contrast.
I really like his wife in contrast, because when it comes down to her standing by his side in things, she really does, take his side in things, and I like the fact that it's the couple that's fighting later, where she's like, oh, exactly what he's talking about.
Well, that's the thing, though. You also notice that both of them have a lot of differences in many ways, but one thing that they seem to have in common is that they do still have, even with Roman and Kate's marriage having some issues, they still stand together. They still are that couple. That is there. They're still a strong unit.
Well, unfortunately, I'll say they are a strong unit. I was going to say they are a strong unit, And I agree with the idea that these are some pretty good couples. Both of them are pretty good couples. But I really feel like the wives don't get much to do in this movie.
Yeah.
On
That's
their
why I
own,
grouped
they're
them together. Yeah,
on their own, they're pretty weak characters.
Yeah.
They're just,
that's the
which is
unfortunate.
kind of strange. It's kind of amusing in a way to knowing, as I do, a lot about Annette Bening's movie history. And like, I think her next major credit, she had like maybe one other minor credit. Yeah, Grifters was like her next major credit, and it's like from there on, she was like the awards darling, the Oscar darling, the and it's kind of like it's interesting to see, like where people get their start,
Go find
Oh,
yourself
yeah,
a spent
totally.
cycle.
Well, and to
And
make another.
he's like, yeah, what does that mean?
Actually, though,
make-
I'll tell you the truth, I didn't get that until I got older, obviously.
Oh yeah. Well, what's funny is that Mad Men did that for real, which is pretty funny later on. But so to make another American Beauty connection, the score for this film was done by Thomas Newman, which is pretty cool.
And that also shows an evolution in his work.
Oh yeah, because
Oh,
he got a lot more avant-garde as he went along,
Yeah.
which is really nice.
Yeah,
'Cause-
this is honestly a pretty conventional 80s comedy score.
Yeah.
I honestly barely even noticed it, and I saw his name in the credits, and then I was like, I'm kind of disappointed in this music.
I know. Well, it ain't American Beauty. It ain't Road to Perdition. It ain't
Yeah.
Skyfall as far as scores go.
Right.
But it's just an interesting thing to point out there. But then I agree with you. I think the wives were a hugely missed opportunity in this. This movie is full of missed opportunities, or ones where the efforts don't quite reach their mark or their fullest potential. But probably the biggest wasted opportunity is the wives, because those are talented actresses, especially Annette Bening, and they could have really played off each other well. They could have been a lot more like fleshed out characters. This was also of an era where I think this was kind of like the last throes of the classical patriarch as a concept in media. And, because then from like the 90s onward, especially with the advent of like the Homer Simpson, you cease to have the classical patriarch, and you got more of the overgrown man-child that has to be taken care of by the wife who is long-suffering and that kind of stuff. But the downside of like the more classical patriarch model for this kind of family unit is that oftentimes the wives don't really get as much to do as they could or should to make the whole thing work, especially given that John Candy and his wife, they generally seem to work out pretty well as a couple, so it's like we'd like to see more of that.
And I think that the children characters, with the exception of Buck, and I want to get back to him in a minute, but I think the children characters also serve a similar purpose. They kind of, again, they play off of Roman and Chet. Ben is there for Chet to do his bonding with, and a little bit of Buck, but again, Buck has other things. And of course, Kara and Mara are there to be the creepy shining kids, and then the other thing is they're there to bring out something more in Dan Aykroyd's character.
Well, and also to show a little bit, I think we touched on this earlier, the difference in parental guidance that the children have been getting, and like to contrast where, Buck is a perfectly healthy American teenager, and his brother is a perfectly normal, bratty kid, basically, but neither of them is really unhappy. They're not really that strange or but then the other kids,
the little brother is strange in that he's almost Fred Savage, but not quite.
Come play with us, Danny.
I could have sworn that was Fred Savage at first, and then I looked it up and I was like, oh, okay, I guess it isn't. But yeah,
Not Fred Savage.
Yeah, he was very close to him.
He doesn't have a mole on his mouth, so
that's true. Well, but the older kid, Buck.
Well, he was there,
that
obviously.
Whole thing was so phoned in.
He was obviously there for the teen appeal. I mean, he was there to bring in a lot of the teen watchers with the little romance between him and Cammy. Which again, Cammy is kind of a one-note character herself, but
Cammy was a hottie.
She was a pretty girl and everything, but just that whole thing was, you're absolutely right. It was clearly meant to bring in the teen demographic, but it was done so half-assedly. They didn't even do the usual 80s movie trope, which is because I've watched a lot of 80s movies with my neighbor that I haven't seen before. One common trope that you see in a lot of 80s movies, and especially ones aimed at teenagers and stuff, because it was the MTV generation, they tended to have a lot of music and a lot of dancing, often the two of them going together. And this had a little bit of standard 80s synth score whenever they were on screen, but that was about it. I was expecting a lot more in the way of those, we got to get the MTV, what's that MTV thing that the kids throw that at the screen, maybe they'll come in. I was expecting more of that, but that wasn't there, which, I mean, I'm sure John Candy wants something different from having done that to death in The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off and stuff like that, because that was the whole movie pretty much. But point being, they're trying to throw that in there, but they're just doing it so half-assedly, and so just okay, checked off that checkbox. It just that whole thing didn't really work for me because it was just so dull.
I never felt that. I thought it was kind of cute that he was playing pool at the other pool table and his stick kind of went under that nicely firmed ass. I'm sorry. She had some nice ass cheeks. She had some nice ass cheeks.
You were obvious. Hey, Dave, you were obviously in the demographic they were looking for at the time when you watched it.
I guess so.
Of course, I was never thinking that it was a teenage. I was never thinking it was a teenage duping mechanism, neither. So, to me, I just enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I just enjoyed the flesh.
I just read it as it was a John Hughes movie, so obviously there were going to be a few teen characters with some sort of a romance thing going on, and
I like the fact that when they finally did actually talk, the fact that she was like, "Oh no, if you can find me," kind of a playfulness, so when he did actually look for her, it was kind of cute that he when he did finally look for her, and when they actually spent some time together, I thought that was kind of romantic. So to me, I could it worked for me. So
I think it was. I'll give some credit here with the as half-assed as it was relative to the story as a whole. I think if you took that piece of it and that subplot and you fleshed it out, there are some good pieces for just the fact that it's fairly understated, and that they both kind of know that because they live far away that it's probably not going to work, even though they still want to give it a shot because they like each other, but they're still both kind of afraid to let it go too far because of this is pre-internet, all that stuff, as far as maintaining a relationship. But the fact that they both kind of know that, but they still like each other enough to kind of give it a shot. It's okay, that has some good pieces to it. It is understated. It's just that it doesn't amount to much in the context of the story as a whole. But that piece of it could make a good movie on its own if they kept it at that kind of small, subdued kind of way.
I think that it would have been a good. I think that could have been a good John Hughes movie on its own, as a if you centered on his relationship with her, and that was the focus of the whole film. But then again, as just a side note, that it did feel shoehorned in to me. But now, as a child, of course,
I said well, to myself, when I heard, certain scenes in the film or certain elements, like the raccoons, like the bear story that he mentions, like the way that he describes it, it makes it sound like it's a vampire bear, and I'm like, why am I not watching a movie about a vampire bear? That sounds awesome. But there are certain bits and pieces in this movie where I was like, why am I not watching a movie about this or that? And I do think that that romance, like if that had been, you could have had the pieces for what could have been a subtle, just kind of sweet, understated little love story,
So before we move on to the plot, I guess we'll go ahead and we could mention some of the other characters, but they really are mostly side characters we could hit in the plot, other than the raccoons and the bear. But the raccoons, I mean, they're their own characters. As Dan said, they could definitely have. They made the movie. What did y'all think of the raccoons?
Oh, they were awesome. They were the stars of the movie.
Yes, give them top billing. Ditch the humans.
They have like human type intelligence.
Yes, they are.
They made the other family look like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
I mean, they stole the show. I also did get the feeling that they were like the gopher from that
Caddyshack.
The Caddyshack thing. I said, hey, it's kind of like this thing.
Right.
I must admit, it was pretty cool. I had some fun watching the raccoons as well.
And the raccoons and the whole idea of the subtitles and as y'all may be able to tell from my picture, the best line in the movie. They're talking about food and the trash cans and all this kind of stuff. And one of them's like, they're not the cleanest species on the face of the earth.
or the fact that they find some raw hot dogs and they sort of like talk about lips and asses.
Well, they're from Chicago, so they got good taste.
Right. These guys are from Chicago. We'll be eating good.
Yeah. Which it made me want to see, well, not just a movie about those characters like all the way through, but it made me specifically want to see, like, if you watched Homeward Bound 1 and 2, where they just did the overdubs, they didn't even do subtitles. With the human voices, it made me want to see that, and to make the raccoons like swear at each other all the time, and be really messed up.
So did you all see the stinger at the end of the credits?
Yeah, I like that.
I thought it was hilarious. They're talking about, it's like, yeah, she's pulled on both ends now.
Yeah, you find out the bear's name's actually Jody.
Who knew that this was Grizzly 2 before Grizzly 2 officially got released?
Well, why don't we move on with the plot? Does anybody have anything else that they really feel like they need to hit with characters before we move through?
I gotta admit, I like some of the like town people involved with this. So when they get to their place where they're supposed to check in, they meet this older man with his wife,
right. Wally.
And they basically he basically hitches a ride on their vehicle just to show them where their fucking place is, and I think I like the moment when they show up for that old man's birthday and they're all trying to take a picture and he's like, dude, why are you doing that? He died on the way over here.
Right.
That was so random.
That was so great.
Well, but
And it's worth mentioning. I want to mention real quick that Wally is played by Robert Prosky, who's a really great character actor. Has been in a lot of stuff over the years, and he's usually a bit of fun.
I like the dog that he
that-
had.
Yeah, the
Hates
dog.
people, loves porcupines.
And he's still got the quills in his face. It's like, come on, you can pick that out. I mean,
Right.
again, to bring up Homeward Bound again. I mean, Chance gets porcupine quills in his face, and the vets pick him out. But it's like, what? Nobody did that for this dog. And then same with like the dead body. It's like, yeah, okay, he wasn't dead for long, but it's like this isn't Weekend at Bernie's, right? You know, it's
That's why
like
they set him up.
And though we somewhat mentioned it, we haven't exactly mentioned him. The guy who gets struck by lightning 66 times. I just love that part every time when he gets struck by lightning. The 67th time.
he was also
Yep.
kind of a random character.
You see him running, you better go for cover. So
Yeah.
we start our plot with our lovely family going through. I love the opening of this film. I love that they play I love the song they play at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
It's just
Yeah,
I don't
Kitty
know
Yak.
why. It's just a fun way of just starting into the film. And
I like that they had a family sing along for it.
Yeah, my family never did that when I did that on
Yeah,
road.
talk about
We-
something that families don't do anymore.
That's definitely something I can
they don't
relate
do.
to.
We
Yeah,
did that when
families. Good.
yeah, Dave.
I was gonna say we did that when we were kids. My sister and I
yeah.
would sing along in the car, and we'd even make up like games on because my dad was a big traveler. Whenever he took us places,
Of course, this was the difference here between this and the Griswolds, because they tried to do that at the beginning of Christmas Vacation, and his wife is playing along gamely, and the kids are just sitting in the back going, "What?
I hate to say this,
I
but
hate this. I hate these people."
Yeah.
I hate to say this. I saw this before I saw Vacation. So
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Well, oddly enough, this family is a little less dysfunctional. Actually, no, this
Yeah.
family is not dysfunctional at all, which is a difference.
They're much less dysfunctional.
Big time difference. But it's just interesting, the whole thing with the family sing along there, which it's like, families don't do that anymore. Nowadays it's like you're lucky if families can halfway tolerate each other in the car without,
or look
listening.
up from the phone or the iPad. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's like leave the shit at home so that we can spend time with each other.
Yeah, well, that's a major generational difference, but also a family functionality difference on top of that. But that was a noticeable thing. Although I love that song, and I'm not really a fan of the film, but I love because of the song anyway. The best part of the movie is the end credits where they dance to "Land of a Thousand Dances," which is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's that, but it does kind of show. You talk about your boomer humor, you talk about your boomer music. Those are both pretty standout pieces of boomer music, especially "Land of a Thousand Dances."
Well, and it shows the family is actually all on board for this. They're all like into the vacation. They're ready to go on vacation together.
Yeah.
They're sitting there going, the kids aren't slouching back like going, wow, we here. They're all looking forward to us. Like, yeah, we got some time off. We're going to spend some time by the lake. Buck's going to explore and bag himself some teen romance and
Dad's going to be fishing for Dad's going to be going fishing, but he's looking for some birds, if you know what I mean.
So when, of course, also we get the note that they're followed by some mysterious car where you hear Roman's theme music as he's going. And the theme music is really good about describing him before we even go. I mean, you can feel there's some trouble lurking as they go. But they check in, and treated with a couple of little bits of foreshadowing, like the shotgun lamp and a couple other things.
Well, of course, I love how they're when Chet like takes a shower, he comes back with a fish. He's like, I found out what was stinking up the shower.
The last couple caught their fill and left.
That's not a pleasant thing to have stinking up your
I did like that, like where he says, like, "Oh, what could go wrong here? Could get the shits from well water." Like, what? Oh no.
I like that line, and I like that character because they tell it like it is.
Right.
But it is a nice cabin overall. I mean, it's not really falling apart. It looked like the last people that stayed there partied a bit too hard in their fishing trip.
Well, and if you see it from the lake, it has a very good back view. You know?
And what were they doing that they had the toilet seat removed and it was sitting on the porch?
Which again, why am I not watching that movie?
It's like a rowdy fisherman trip.
Remove fish.
Well, we of course are also treated with the entry of Roman, which I think is also. I love the entry. I wasn't quite sure what was going on when I was first watching this, but of course I got that later. But I found, I don't know, it really did a good job of explaining what kind of a dick Roman was. He breaks out the camera and he says that line like, Shalonda, the wood princess with Horny the bear, Swookie's cousin. No, do it on the floor. And she's covering the children's eyes.
Right.
But kind of gives you that kind of feel like he's not necessarily being mean, but it's just his it's kind of his way of interacting. Which of course
his wife was trying to warn him before they even came up. But well, we weren't really invited to this gathering.
Well, he presented it more like they should be honored to have us there. And that's a bit of a difference. But you get to find out more of that as time goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And but we also... so, of course, they have their introduction. They have that famous, they sit together and talk while Jacob was talking about, where of course Roman was talking about the wonderful ways that we can utilize our economy to improve upon nature, and Chet obviously liking these trees. But it is a very interesting thing because a lot of people still to this day see the world that way. I remember when I was in college, I had a schoolmate named Angie, which I think Jacob is familiar with her there.
Yes.
And when she was there in the mountains, and Jacob, you're familiar with the way the mountains are, she was impressed by the paper mill. The reaction. Her first reaction was sheer horror because she had missed it the first way down. But then she was talking about it's all waste, all this empty land. Tear down the trees, build on it. I'm like,
why are the cute ones always so strange?
You could put apartments here. It's like, the problem is you got nobody who wants to live here.
And even fewer that want to live there if you tear all the trees down. That's like the one thing Covington has going for it. But anyway,
maybe that was also why I like this movie, is that there's some similarities in a way
right.
to where I grew up in the mountains as to this kind of place, because you got your mountains, you got your lakes. We have a big lake over there. You've got your bears. Maybe not that big a bear.
The bears.
But, we do have the black bears. And but yeah, that whole thing does. I mean, you were right though. That is a very good contrast to the two personalities right there. They work hard to make sure that they can give you the full setup as to what they're about, like right.
Oh yeah.
So what do y'all think of that like first introduction scene that just throws them all together? Gives you a pretty good introduction to the characters and throws.
Well, I would have been if I was like making out with my wife when if I had a brother and showed up, I would have found a way to kill him. But I would have found a way, and I would have stuffed that videotape up his ass.
Oh yeah, they were filming the whole thing too.
Well, you got one of two choices in that scenario. Either you kill him or you ask him to join in, and he doesn't really seem like he's the latter type, so you better kill him.
Like Moe's character in last night's game.
And
or you'd be like you damn well better make sure we get 90% of your profit off of that.
Something like that.
John Candy, his character is gritting his teeth throughout the whole entire visit.
Yeah.
Because he was expecting to have some alone time with his wife.
And I'll admit I did enjoy that horny bear crack. That was a funny.
There's something about bears in this movie. Maybe because it is Chicago and it is still bears. Maybe, I don't know. And
maybe that's
the Cubs, bears, this, that, but it's like there's a shitload of bears in this thing.
I guess a complete Wisconsin hate of Chicago Bears.
Actually, that's a good question, Dave. You guys got a lot of bears over in Wisconsin like that?
Not that I know of. It's fairly common in camp movies to me, where you'll have like a bear story or cougars or wolves or coyotes, but
and again, when they get to that bear story, like the way he tells it, it's like, okay, so bears become man-eaters presumably upon tasting human blood, but it's
I love the way that he embellishes that story.
But it's like, okay, so bears are vampires now. Okay, which, again, why am I not watching that movie?
That's that old school concept of once an animal has tasted human blood, it only wants human blood. I think that's more of humans being all full of themselves, thinking that, hey, we taste the best. I mean, even sharks spit us out when they taste us. Sharks
human beings tend to think that they're really fucking special, and nature does not see it that way. I'm sorry.
Right.
Well, the thing is, people react differently when it comes to nature. I mean, even if it were just a raccoon coming into camp looking for food, it's not there to attack you. But if you if you get startled and you react, of course it's gonna come and lumber over there and try to shake your hand. Well, while it's trying to shake your hand, you're thinking it's trying to attack you.
Well, it could be like in Family Guy where it opens the thing and it just goes for his face.
Well, but that does bring up an important point here. So he sets up, although maybe it was intentional for this reason that I'm about to theorize. So again, he tells the vampire bear story and it freaks everybody out. It has the opposite effect that he wants. Maybe that's why he's getting really close for comfort with the other bears that are on top of the car and that kind of stuff, I guess. Because I kept asking myself, okay, well, common sense tells you that when a bear approaches your car or is in any close proximity to you, even if you are in your car, common sense dictates get the fuck out of there, because you have seen videos all over the place where the bears will put their front paws down and break the glass like that because they're strong. And it's like, then you got a bear that's on top of the hood of the car, he's trying to scratch the windshield and stuff, and it's like, get the fuck out of there. And he takes way too long to do that. And when he does, it's like very slow because obviously he doesn't want to I guess doesn't want to shake the bear off. But it's like out of all the times to go fast, you would think that would be the time.
Must go
He-
faster.
he-
Must
he
definitely go faster.
He
Well,
wanted his younger son to have an experience with
Yeah,
with
he
the
did.
outdoors.
And I guess that it was to try to undo the scars of the oh so traumatizing vampire bear story. But then again, it's like, okay, a story is one thing, but an actual real bear that's that close, it's like, I don't care,
Right.
story, no story, you get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I've had bear
granted,
encounters
the likelihood,
before.
well, but
And-
granted, the likelihood of a bear, unless you're trying to take their food or hurt their young or whatever, are they going to attack you viciously or anything? Probably not. But still, you get out of there. It's just
Well, I mean,
sense.
as somebody who's dealt with black bears before and has listened to the stories my parents have said, there's a reason why you don't feed them.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily because the bears have any malice towards you. They're looking for food. When we were
Yeah,
in
they come
scouts,
to
we were
expect
taught, you put it in the trees, you put your food in the trees, or you lock it up so that the bears aren't attracted to the camp. They're not necessarily out for you. The reason why you want to do that is because the bears will do the exact same with your food in your camp, like those raccoons did to the trash cans, and they will wreck the crap out of it. And they can do a good wrecking with that big a size. Black bears are not usually dangerous to humans unless you screw with them, or their children. But darned if they could do damage if they want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they might not be trying to actually kill you or eat you necessarily, although
They want another Zagnut.
well, again, you don't necessarily know that, but more than likely they wouldn't. But even so, they could, hurt you accidentally. They could stomp on you. They could steal your food. They could damage.
They
your
have
car.
large claws and nasty, big, pointy teeth.
Exactly.
Just recently, I guess either on the 4th or after the 4th, there were like a group of people that were sitting and waiting for fireworks, and supposedly a little small bear attacked them. Well, I'm looking at the video of it, and it looks like they're throwing shit at it.
Oh,
like
most rattlesnake bites are people screwing with them. So yeah,
they say that it came out of the bushes, and yet all it does is just come out of the bushes, and then immediately you see someone throwing something at it. It's like you antagonize that shit.
Yeah.
It could have been horny the bear.
And then don't be surprised when go ahead.
The big story was they claimed that it was attacking them.
Oh, bullshit.
Well, there are people that if they see a wild animal move, it is clearly attacking them.
Yeah.
Well, in their
those
little
people
world,
are stupid,
I guess.
but
I'm scary to see something that's not.
No, but again, it's like be glad that
normal.
thank your lucky stars that Mama Bear wasn't right around the corner, and because Mama Bear, if she saw that, would tear you limb from limb.
You were saying something, Roger? I just
simply saying that this, of course, seeing an animal is probably going to be it's going to be startling to see. Not like a normal animal would be startling to a city folk. I mean, this seeing bears and raccoons and critters and stuff that sucks to eat you and stuff like that. Of course it'd be startling. People when they look at a bear, they probably wouldn't think rationally, like stand your ground or play dead or whatever. Or take your food you have it holding and throw it and run another direction.
I don't know. I guess.
Of course.
But don't give it food and have it lowered out onto your car either.
Yeah. Especially when there's signs everywhere saying "Do not feed the bears."
Well, and there's the old.
Going to be more likely to go to a human place where there's more food just like it.
Yes.
Well, there's the expression. there's the expression "don't poke sticks at a wounded bear" or "poke sticks at a bear
Well,
in general," and it's like
a bear's gonna eat you if you fuck
Ex-
with it, man. So yeah, that's plain and simple.
the moral of the story is don't fuck with bears. How about that?
I would.
Well, why don't we-
Look. All I gotta say is they were here first.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's for damn sure.
So
and they own the place.
when you think
So, yeah.
when you think about your reaction, remember this was their home first.
Well, why
Right.
don't we move
That's
on
true.
to the story? Of course, we have the lobster tails scene where,
Oh,
of course, he's like, "We're not going to eat hot dogs. We're going to have lobster tails." And of course, he's showing off that's like $23 a pop, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's expensive even for actually. Shoot, it's almost it's more expensive than it is now.
It made the
Which,
raccoons
funny-
happy.
That
And
nobody
fun-
wanted to eat
fun
they
fact
wanted
of-
to eat the lobster tail. They wanted to eat the normal food like burgers and hot dogs instead.
Well, what's funny though? Okay, so both John Candy and Dan Aykroyd are from Canada. Lobster burgers and lobster-related foods and stuff are much more common in Canada because, well, they're up there near the Arctic waters where they get them. So obviously, it's not quite as much of a it's more common for them to get it. So, you can find like related dishes at places like McDonald's and stuff like that. So, for us Americans, it might be a bit more of a delicacy than it is up there.
Unless you're in Maine.
Right. I mean, that's really the isn't that the main lobster
Or
grounds?
Alaska.
Is basically Maine up into Newfoundland, that area.
Yeah.
Like,
But I mean, it's all dependent on times. Like lobster used to be incredibly
Right.
common. It used to be fed to slaves because
right.
it was that common, and now it's the opposite way around, where it's like extremely.
Right.
Expensive.
But hot dogs, though,
Supply and demand.
what hot dogs are made of.
Have a
But they
hot
are
dog
awfully
on me,
delicious.
my friend.
It's like
They're
sausage
made
and hot
out of
dogs are awfully
animal odds and ends.
I agree,
Hot
Roger.
dog
It
on
is
me, my friend. They're the particle board of meat.
I agree with you, Roger. It is just a sort of a sausage, but it is that idea that they have, that they use the parts of the animal that you don't normally get. But then they had the raccoons going on about it too.
Right.
But
Well, they were the intelligent ones in the movie. Yeah.
Yes.
so, but then it leads into the bear story. So that's the reason why I wanted to make sure I got that out. Because I didn't want to throw that out because him doing the lobster tails is another good tell about the character.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Chet liking the hot dogs. Well, he's the everyman. The everyman likes hot dogs. He doesn't need lobster.
Yeah.
He'll eat the lobster, but he doesn't need the lobster. Shoot,
Especially if you're grilling out, it doesn't matter if you're having gourmet food or not. If you're grilling properly, you're gonna make anything taste good.
Now, admittedly, I would rather have hot dogs than lobster tails on the grill, but that's because I'm allergic to shellfish, so I have to deal with what's not going to close my throat at the end of the day.
That is a consideration.
That tends to be important.
So
It does make me wish that Dan Aykroyd's character had, with the lobsters and all the fancy things in life, it does make me wish that he could have washed it down with some Crystal Head vodka, because that's Dan Aykroyd's brand of vodka.
His what?
Which comes in his brand of vodka, the Crystal Head vodka. It's the bottle that comes in a skull-shaped bottle.
Oh.
And yeah,
I did not care
really
as much
cool.
about that one.
Well,
I gotta say that I had a different beverage come to mind, because this is Dan Aykroyd we're talking about, in the general vicinity of the Great Lakes, and when he gave that whole speech about how they needed to develop all that property and whatever, my mind immediately flashed to his famous Saturday Night Live commercial, shilling for swill mineral water,
Yeah.
dredged from the bottom of Lake Erie.
I thought that was Bill Murray, though.
No, that was Dan Aykroyd, wasn't it?
Well, it was they were contemporary, so it could have been
Yeah.
like at least written by him or something. But I thought about the JonTron review of Crystal Head.
But
I actually have an empty bottle of it.
I've
well,
never
that's what you
tried
buy
it.
Crystal. That's what you buy Crystal Head for. Is you buy it for the bottle because you don't
Yeah.
really. I mean, it's not for the vodka.
I didn't care about the vodka. I let my ex-fiance drink it, but I kept the bottle.
Because you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. I've seen people paint those things up
Exactly.
really nice.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I guess it was Murray. Oh, why did I think it was? Huh.
But of course, we get to the bear story, and the bear story we find out later is all too real, except for a slight exaggeration where he's talking about the floorboard started raising up. A grizzly is a pretty nasty bear, but usually it's not able to make the floorboards rise up and down.
Maybe it was the one from Grizzly.
Yeah,
But,
or Grizzly too.
Yeah, I know.
You talk about a bear that will kill a person. A grizzly will do that pretty quickly if you're screwing with it. Well, much like the black bear,
the
but
grizzly man.
You don't want to mess with them anyway because they are big. I mean, it's like polar bears.
That was a good
grizzlies. You don't wanna
document.
mess with them, huh?
Well,
That was a good documentary.
Polar bears and grizzly bears are predators. They are big and they are predators. Black bears are more hunter gatherers. They will eat almost anything, but they're a polar bear is a straight up predator.
Oh, you're more than likely going to be killed by a polar bear than you would have been.
One of my favorite nature images when it comes to bears, because polar bears historically are seen by the public as so cute, and when wintertime comes around, Coca-Cola has the Coca-Cola polar bears. But then my favorite image from nature is when they're like all covered in blood. And of course, it sticks out like very strongly because their coats are all white and they're in white icy climates. So it's like when they're bloody, it's like it really stands out.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, how cutesy are these things now? Huh?
There's nothing that rips the blinds up in nature like National Geographic.
Well, see, that's what happens when you take their Coca-Cola.
Exactly. Well, that's what happens when they don't get it. They go crazy. Yep. They want their Coca-Cola, goddammit.
Yeah, they go
Cokeheads.
ape shit.
Yeah.
But so I mean that story itself, of course, he tells them it's something that his father told him and all that, which is technically a lie because the bear exists and that he met.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that out later in the movie that he did meet the bear. Maybe it didn't shake the house down, but he definitely made it bald by shooting it in the head. It's like a shotgun's not going to kill a big bear like that. I disagree. A shotgun, a close range shotgun blast to the head would probably hurt that bear significantly more than shaving his head.
What are the odds of that? Like, really, the buckshot.
Buckshot's a little different from like an actual shell, though.
Well, but I know what you mean. But bottom line is like, okay, but like, so what? It would like scalp the bear and then maybe cause some scarring such that the hair doesn't grow back. But again, it's like, what are the odds of that? Let alone for it to happen again on the bear's ass. And it's like, geez, like what is this? She's
bald on both ends now.
Yeah, but it's like, what is this? Wile E. Coyote logic? Well, clearly,
because it's simply slapstick humor.
I guess so.
Yeah, it is.
Plain and simple. There's nothing really. You got to think about it. Shooting a bear so it's bald, and it's shooting its ass so it has bared buttocks. This simply doesn't happen.
I know, and it is a little unfair, admittedly, because it is a comedy, but it's like usually what happens is like when the main things about a movie don't necessarily grab you, then you do kind of notice certain things that don't quite add up. Plus, like just other even smaller things, like the person died. So what? They don't call the police. They don't like do that right away. Certain little things kind of add up throughout this, as far as like just simple logical things that people would normally do even within
Well-
a comedy world that they don't do for some reason, and it does kind of make you stand.
It didn't help that he didn't he
Makes
threw
it
that kerosene or whatever the heck he
stand
had
out.
in the fire. Now,
Mhm.
I will say that there is also leads to the scene, and y'all were talking about Dan Aykroyd, but it also is a telling thing about the character, and shows that while he holds himself up as superior, he does secretly admire Chet because of his bond with his family. He wants
Right.
He wants
Right.
that so bad, and he tries that. So he tries to mimic it, and he tells that story about, well, these escaped mental patients could get out, and they killed his family. And he had me nightmares for weeks. And of course, you flash forward to morning, everybody's kind of waking up, and they're still sitting there awake in the bed.
Right. And just the way he goes about it. Good evening. How's it going? Listen, girl, as your father, I feel it incumbent upon me to set the record straight on the validity of the tale. Like,
and of course, all
Which
those
it-
girls are interested in is that mine shaft nearby.
right.
And they foreshadow that later on in the movie too. But that's a good, because the kids like to yell down the holes and then hear the echo back, which. Yeah, I guess so. In that case, there should have been more fun things to do than that, but whatever.
You mentioned the Shinings that could almost like the girls wanting to wander off and shit. Get into trouble. It's almost like Stephen King's It or something. It's like where's Pennywise? But instead of Pennywise, you had a bear. But This thing could have easily turned into a horror movie.
Yes. Actually, they were looking for a kid named Danny to play with, is what it was. Come play with us, Danny.
Why not?
But
They were looking. They were looking for the other pieces of their bodies.
And Roman was more on the fun uncle side because he's talking about getting a jet boat, and John Candy wants to do the pontoon boat, put the grill on there, and just cruise the lake. I'm sitting there. Of course, maybe it's because I'm in my 40s now. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a fun thing, relaxing on the lake on the pontoon boat. But it's funny thing is, as a small kid, I also agreed with John Candy on it, and I preferred that idea to the jet boat.
And it was called "Slap My Wake."
I know when I was growing up, my church would go out and camp on Lake Shawano, and oftentimes we would rent a pontoon boat to go out on the lake there. But when they're doing the go-karts, that kind of reminds me of going up the Shawano Lake because near Shawano, downtown Shawano, it's a go-kart racetrack. So we would go do that as a fun youth thing.
And the movie at that point is divided into kind of two different angles. You get the stuff between Bucky and his love interest. I really don't think we need to go into it pretty much any more than what we have. I think
we covered it up.
And then the rest of it is really John Candy going on his family activities, and Roman kind of screwing it up for him to the point where he actually tries to leave in the middle of at one point, but then his wife convinces him to stay. But that whole jet boat incident where he's sitting there and he's like, he's trying to teach his son to water ski.
And he keeps saying the most important thing, if there's trouble, let go. What does he not do?
I like how he goes off and then the kid's like, Dad, let go of the rope. But of course, it wouldn't be a very funny scene if he just let go of the rope and it was done.
Right.
As he's like, Roman, you bastard! Bastard!
It could have easily turned into the opening of Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah, could have. The way Roman was driving, that was a crowded lake too.
Yeah, he was driving reckless on that.
I love
That's what I'm saying.
How him and his wife were just sitting there and they're seeing John Candy gesture and they're like, oh, He's saying go.
He's
let's
going.
go.
He's going.
Yeah. Well, he was screaming, "You bastard!" and they thought he said, "Go faster." I mean,
I mean, really, is it so hard to believe that it could have made a wrong turn and then the sleepaway camp starts?
You also kind of have the go-kart scene where Roman hits him in the head with a golf ball. Then you have the horse tour scene where John Candy has the disagreement with his horse and ends up having to walk.
And then, of course, the famous 69er.
Yes. Oh, and of course
the old 96er, yeah.
And of course we also covered the dead person.
69er was a different movie there, Dave.
I know. I was just seeing if you were paying attention.
Well, the son with the pool key was trying to get a little 69er going, but unsuccessfully.
Yeah. Just to address that whole story, essentially the woman, she's she's in this. She hates the small town life, which it's a vacation town.
Yeah.
All that, and she kind of hates that. She sees the guys that come in. She dates them for a couple of times, and they're gone within the week. And he's like, "I'm going to be different from all those people." Don't see how. Then he ends up standing her up because of the 96er incident.
Yeah.
But she does make up with him on the last day. I don't really know. What they planned on doing because it was the day he was leaving. But hey, you never know. Maybe they're going to meet again like the next year that they come out there.
You never know.
They were trying to.
We just assume that she's trying to make him crazy about her for that next visit.
Well, again, they were trying to get their own little 69er thing going, but it just didn't work out.
So, who amongst you do you feel like you could eat the 96-ounce steak?
I could.
I maybe could have tackled it in my college days. I would not try it now.
Same here.
No way.
Yeah, I think maybe 10 to 20 years ago.
Although I love the fact that they do that whole camera angle down to the meat locker and then show that big ass slab of meat, and then they slap it on the table.
Now, I will say this: I would have probably, if I was trying the challenge legit and I was in my 20s when I actually could eat something like that, I would probably have been eating along the gristle and fat because I usually use the fat to help flavor the steak meat as we go. So
I could have stood it better if it was prime rib.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, then it wouldn't be a challenge.
Right.
How you gonna get a prime rib that size? You'd have to put it together like Frankenstein style.
Well, talk about a missed opportunity. I kept saying, okay, so it's this humongous steak. John Candy's a big guy. You would think out of anybody that could take this thing, or at least put up a good fight with it, that it would be John Candy. It would be a fair fight, shall we say.
You would think that, but then you look at these people who are like food eating champions and they're like these little old tiny people. And
well,
I will say this.
Well, but here's my point.
I will say this.
Okay, regardless, but let's say okay.
I was going to say that I am a 3-time champion of eating the thick burgers at Hardee's.
There you go. Well, my
you
point
must be proud.
Yeah. my point is, let's pretend, okay, he's met his match. This thing is a massive steak, which that seems to be where they're going with it. He's not feeling so great, and he, of course, throws up. But, it's off screen. It's very brief. It's very kind of, thrown in there.
Causes it. It's the raccoons that cause it because they decide to leave the trash cans outside, and then they are like, inside, and they're like, that's the line that Jacob has up there. Not the cleanest species in the world.
Well, no, that was earlier, but someone said something about look at all the maggots or something like that.
Yeah. But my point is, the missed opportunity part is, like, okay, so he throws up, as we all know that that's going to happen because they've been building it up. But it's like, if this were in the hands of like the Farrelly brothers or something, that would have been like the most epic throw up scene of all time, like rivaling Stand By Me, something like that. And it's like, that could have like really been like a big payoff for that joke, and instead it's just kind of off screen, like 2 seconds, that's it. And it's like, we all know it's coming. They're telegraphing.
Right.
Just one
crazy.
whisper thing.
But if you're gonna do it, but it's like, if you're gonna do it, like, okay, go for it. Make it, as they said in Stand By Me, make it a complete and total barfarama. Which again, for a movie that's a serious drama film, like that movie has one of the most epic barfing scenes of all time.
The one that always comes to mind that would have been another interesting way to do the payoff there was the like the scene where you get the really big kid in Varsity Blues, where he's getting drunk, runs to the washing machine, ends up puking in there, and he comes back, he's like, such and such puking rally or whatever, like, and he's like, give me a beer.
Yeah, well, you see what my point is, that there was an opportunity to get up pretty big, and again, they're having John Candy of all people go up against this thing, so this stake has got to be pretty intense, so therefore the payoff needs to be more intense, and they just didn't really deliver.
He did.
So that was like, so it's a 6-pounder, right?
It was a 96 pounder.
No, 96 ounces. I don't think it was 96 pounds.
It was 96.
No, it was a 96 ounce steak. It was 6 pounds total. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would survive 96 pounds.
That would be a much bigger steak.
I think that would. I don't think your colon would exist anymore if that happened.
I would like to see the cow that produces a 96 pound steak.
Please.
That would be great.
I'd be like, wasn't this like a Paul Bunyan sort of play, a Paul Bunyan's cupboard or whatever it was?
It's like the brontosaurus steak that was put on top of the police car.
So, what were you saying, Roger?
Oh, nothing.
So do you think that you could take the 96er?
No, not even a small fraction of it. Maybe when I was younger, perhaps I could have tried to look at it and give it a good shot. But these days now, I eat very small, very much more smaller now.
Apparently, there's a real restaurant in Texas, and there's probably a bunch more like it, where they have a steak. I forget what it's called. It's a steak that was featured on, I think, Food Network or like the Travel Channel or something. But the point being, it's such that it's a big steak, and you can order it, and if you eat it all within an hour, then you don't have to pay for it. And you it's like a big contest. It's like their claim to fame, and stuff like that. I imagine that other restaurants probably do something like that, so it's not unheard of. But
I think they have enough of them, and
the biggest steak challenge is actually the Big Texan, which is what you're thinking of. It's 72 ounces, so it's actually lighter than this steak.
So even the old 69er would be less intense than that one.
So not only do you have to take out the steak, but you have to also eat the bread roll with butter. You have to eat a baked potato and have a shrimp cocktail and a salad.
What?
Oh, jeez.
No,
and they charge you by the ounce for the steak, so you'd pay $72 otherwise.
And then people wonder why America has an obesity problem.
It's all about diet and exercise.
So it's all or nothing with the cost.
You got to admit, some of those challenges are like insane.
ridiculous. Or it's like what was that? So there was that show, the internet show, Epic Mealtime, or was it an internet show or was it a TV show? I can't remember. Epic Mealtime. I think it was an internet show. But point is, Epic Mealtime, they would make these foods that were like, if you ate them more than once, it would be like, the quickest way to ensure that you'd have a heart attack, at a young age. Like they were that bad for you. But they were these guys that were like normally like very healthy people, and they made these dishes that, again, you would never want to eat habitually because they're so unhealthy. But then they'd eat them, but then they would spend like quite a long time like working out and kind of working the weight off of it. To try to offset it. But the point being, like, you eat enough of that stuff for so long, and it's like, well, no wonder that there is an obesity problem. But also, it's like you would have to. You think about the amount of work you'd have to put in to get it off of you.
There's some common sense here. If they had like the guy that did the McDonald's challenge for a month. They only ate breakfast, lunch, dinner at McDonald's.
Yeah.
They used to be healthy, then became a 300-pound nightmare afterwards. I mean, it's common what you are, what you eat. So if you want to eat a bunch of stuff like that, you're going to get overweight. There's no sense, trying to sue,
but
companies for.
We in the United States, we don't have common sense in this country.
Yeah. It's actually a lot harder to do it with the McDonald's thing than it, because even Super Size Me, he was eating a lot more than what he broadcast, because the calories didn't even add up appropriately to what he was actually eating. He was actually probably eating twice the amount that he was reportedly eating.
Yeah. Well, and plus people's bodies, even if the amounts were the same or whatever, people's bodies do process food slightly differently, at least slightly.
There are people that could eat McDonald's like that every day and they'd still be thin as a rail.
Yeah, some people have much higher. Yeah, high metabolism, body type is a factor as well, but yeah, it's ridiculous.
Now, the other things that are worth of note is, of course, you've got the fishing one where they use leeches as the bait, and then they fall asleep on the boat.
Hell, you would do that?
I don't know. That's a weird thing.
Actually, and hey, speak of Stand By Me, that also had leeches as a prominent plot point. Interestingly enough.
Have any of y'all used leeches to fish with?
No.
I don't think I've ever seen a leech in real life, and I don't.
I've seen a few.
I have.
I don't really intend to, because
no, it's disgusting.
When I went to Renaissance Fair in Illinois, there was this guy who had a jar of leeches, and he was in character as this character, and I would try to fuck with him just to see if he would get out of character, but he stayed in character, and his leeches they were definitely real.
Well, the idea being that he was adhering to the medieval idea that you had bad blood or whatever, and you had to get it leached out of you.
Yeah,
it had to do with the four humors.
Yeah,
if the four humors were out of balance, you had a sick body. So
Yeah.
you get rid of the bad blood, you get rid of the bad stuff. It killed so many people doing that, but
old school. Well, now, I mean, shoot, look at my field, psychology. It's known, of course, for its humane treatment of people in the past.
No trial and error whatsoever throughout the years.
Lobotomized.
Hey, lobotomy was a legit science. The guy killed 99 chimps with it, and out of the 100, one of them survived. So therefore, it was proven to be a success and useful in humans.
Clearly.
That's obviously well, it's the same thing with Freudian psychiatry. It failed 100%, so therefore, obviously, it only works on men because he only used women as the previous base. So, these are the foundations of modern day psychology. But with the other thing that was of note is the bat scene. I can say we personally had a episode very similar to this.
Oh my god, yeah.
in this very house
Did
that
you
I am
get
in.
those? Did you get those killer bat hunting outfits going on?
Yeah.
Actually, it was kind of funny because we didn't get much videotape of it, but my parents were here, and I was still quite young at the time. I think it was about 11 or 12. So I'd seen this movie a number of times, and a bat got into this house, and they were all walking around with like the trash cans on their head, just like the
Yeah.
John Candy. They're trying to catch the darn thing.
They're trying to be samurai warriors.
They didn't kill it, and they managed to get it to get out the window, but it was
Yeah.
still quite funny to see them just trying to hunt down the
Yeah.
bat.
As,
The funniest scene in the whole movie was that one.
As our dear James Rolfe would say, "Oh man, why's it always got to be bats?"
Well, I mean, it was a funny scene. I mean,
It was
did
a
y'all?
funny scene.
And these are all the vacation in the middle scenes that led up, of course, to the confrontation between Roman and Chet, where it just boils to a head. And then Roman tells him, "Well, I was going to offer you this investment opportunity." He tells a story about how at his wedding, Chet had talked about how he was just this terrible person, and he had managed to overhear it. So Chet decides to go ahead and write him a check for as much as he can cover for it. But you find out that Roman manages to change his mind, finally having a bit of a heart.
And it was
Yeah,
thanks
like
to his
Rich.
wife. It was thanks to his wife because they were in the car and she was all going on about how
kind
he
he
put
was
so
and how
much
great he was.
trust in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's always life savings right there. It's probably
It's right there, man. This is life is right there in your hands.
I did sort of mentally check out of the movie right around that time. Like I watched it still. I saw what all was happening, but I was just in terms of caring, I was like, I don't know. It just kind of lost me at that point, like with the whole story and like him trying to swindle him at first and stuff. It's like, I don't know. I just felt like, especially in the climax, it felt like they were really trying to stretch this thing out and somehow keep the tension going. And it was just like, there's just not a whole lot to this in the first place. And then they're really stretching for just that. How do we keep these characters together that probably shouldn't necessarily be together, you know?
You gotta love how he does it earlier on. He's talking to this guy, and he's like, "He's a priest. I've been to his church." Yeah, once. Like, he's trying to get the priest to invest the 25 grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you find out that he's been like out of the investment exchange for years, and he's just been pretending and living on credit. And it does set up a scene where you actually get to see him for who he really is. But then those little girls decide to do the stupid kid thing, as you do. And
I'm
then
telling you, Pennywise was that bear. That's clearly why they were being lured.
You were saying something, Dave?
No, my whole thing with this movie is the bear, the final bear scene. I just love that part.
Oh, we're getting to that definitely. Where they do manage to get in, and you get to see Dan Aykroyd's character, try and weigh things and realize, even though I'm claustrophobic, I am their father, and finally act like a human being for once. And go to help his kids. He saves them on his own, but they seem to have passed John Candy on the way back as he went to get a rope, and then he ends up pulling that giant grizzly bear out, which tells me he's much stronger than you would give him credit to pull. That's a pretty
well, kind of similar to.
Well,
they do again in
this full bear out of nowhere. And then he says, "Oh my God, the bear! Oh my God, the bear!" Growls at him and screams at him and runs away from the bear.
Well, okay, so
the bear obviously
a little bit of planting,
the bald head and all that. Yeah, this is the bear that was tearing from the story.
Well, a little subtle plant. Again, it's not John Hughes's best work by any means, but there is some subtle planting. Well, but there's some subtle planting and payoff with John Candy himself is well, kind of like John Goodman in the sense that they're both big guys, and you could say very bear-like in terms of like they're stronger than their girth would lead you to believe, or perhaps because of their girth they're so strong.
I don't know.
But they made a couple of allusions to what?
I don't think that actually there was the case of actually saying that they're strong because they're big. Because obviously, they're simply making a comedic type of scene where he just pulls out a bear with some rope. It's just a comedy.
Well, here's where I'm going with it. Well, here's where I'm going with that. So they make allusions to the fact that he himself is rather bear-like because he's horny bear and this and that, so that he's already kind of allied with the idea of a bear, so it kind of makes sense why he would go up against one in the climax there.
Horny the bear
but
versus
it's
the bald killer bear.
Exactly.
This is like whatever movie it was. What the guy has, the movie that shows the gun on the wall, and eventually the gun is used later on in the movie.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, it's Chekhov.
Well, I mean, like I say, it was good for.
Well, that's Chekhov's gun.
Now, I did find it funny. He's sitting there and he runs from the bear, and he gets back to the house. He's like trying to like get out the words, and he finds this big bald bear. It's like, oh, bear sandwich. Okay, big sandwich.
Big bear, follow me. Big bear, follow me. Big bear, chase me.
And then the bear gets in. I do like how the bear is like, basically like, take that.
And he's like, get off, you son of a bitch.
I did find that hilarious.
It's a very hilarious scene. You got like an 800-pound bear that's bouncing up and down on John Candy on top of a door, and it is a funny scene.
Right.
And it's not some dude in a bear costume. It's a real bear.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but they would have had some stuff, of course, because that 800-pound bear would have killed him if he had actually done that. But
there's some props involved with it. It's obviously there's some props involved with it. But it is interesting to actually use an actual bear.
To think that this movie could have been The Revenant many years before The Revenant actually came out.
It was actually kind of funny to watch the bear do it. Like, the bear was basically saying, yeah, that's right, you take that.
Yes, John Candy's Oscar bait movie.
Well, I mean, The Revenant was basically this movie except serious.
They do get the shotgun lamp, and the guy's actually showing up with the lamp. John Candy plugs in the lamp before fire.
Yeah.
It's loaded.
And he ends up blowing the fur off its ass, and he runs away screeching.
I love that fucking screech.
That was the best scene in the whole movie. Easy.
Yeah.
It was that's way in the end of the movie. What did we say that?
How's that for a pain in your ass?
That would have been but they did save the best scene for last, but man, I kind of wish it was a little bit earlier, because it would have been a little bit of, be a little better.
They did save one of the best scenes for last. Why is Jody sitting in the lake? The big guy fired a gun at her. She's bald on both ends now. Love it.
Yeah. I was wondering about that. Why a shotgun lamp? Why not this kind of?
Why not?
Because it's funny. It's funny to see.
Why a leg lamp in A Christmas Story?
No, admittedly, they didn't beat anybody to death.
The warm glow of electric shone from the window.
The bulb had to shoot just right to bear the bear's ass.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just funny all around because you don't expect that shit.
No.
No.
And then they're screaming at the bears, the outside scene with the bear screaming, juxtaposing on it. Of course, I was laughing. It was a good scene.
Now, of course, you do the wrap ups. Of course, Buckley gets the girl sort of, and then you get they kind of have an agreement, and then they're like, "Yep, race you home." And he's like, "Ah, race your home." And then they're like, apparently they worked out behind his back that they would stay at their house temporarily, so they would
Yeah.
get the good spot in the garage. He's like, "Okay, get in the car. Let's go."
Right.
Meet your
Because
uncle
now
home.
they're extremely poor. They can't survive on their own.
Right.
Which
So-
again, it's like at some point, it's like, when does John Kerry just snap and like turn into Jack Torrance, and just kill Dan Aykroyd and his family, for like taking him for a ride for so long.
Well, I see. What you don't know is that later on, Dan Aykroyd finds that he gets a job as a caretaker of a hotel, and
Yeah,
so
there
he
you
his axe and his little
two
girls go
girls.
up to the hotel to watch it for the summer.
Indeed.
Mr. Aykroyd, you were the caretaker here.
Yes.
And the thing about Aykroyd is he does have Asperger's, or
Yes, he does.
So as a character actor having a disability, I think he did very well in this time period.
Oh, I mean, he was
Well,
an
he,
amazing. He still is an amazing actor in many ways. He does an excellent job of what he does.
Well, for him, and for a lot of people, depending on where they fall on the spectrum, it might not necessarily be disabling per se, but it does make them see the world differently.
I'm on the spectrum myself, and I don't really see it as a disease, as a disability, more of as a condition.
Well, yeah,
Well,
and
that's
again,
what I'm saying. Is like that's why they call it neurodiversity.
Neurodiverse.
I think
Yeah, well, and
those
that's-
of us.
that's- that's why-
Asperger's has been kind of discontinued since Asperger himself was a Nazi. So
Well, and
Yeah.
also Asperger's as a condition has been lumped in with the rest of the autism spectrum disorder, which is sort of makes it hard to talk about, because it's like, well, when you talk about it is a spectrum, but also it's like, well, where do you fall on it? Because some people, are more perhaps obviously disabled than others, comparatively speaking. But then, like, you look at people like Dan Aykroyd, you look at people like Daryl Hannah or Anthony Hopkins, and they're all on the spectrum. But for them, it allowed them to be able to excel in their craft in various ways. And it was Dan Aykroyd's obsessions with certain things, such as the paranormal and law enforcement, that allowed him to even think of something as out there as Ghostbusters. So
that's the thing, is it's not necessarily a disability if you can utilize it to your advantage. It's I mean, again, that's where you fall on it. I mean, you've got people who are on the spectrum at the low end that, yes, that they are non-functional, but you've got, I mean, there are many people who are functioning extremely well on the high end that wouldn't even know that they have it.
Exactly. And that's a lot of the people I admire that there are a lot of world-changing people that are on the spectrum that you'd be amazed at just what all they've done, and the innovations and the just different ways of seeing things, like Dan Aykroyd, and like my hero Stanley Kubrick was never like officially diagnosed in his lifetime, but he has all the signs, for someone that would have probably been on the spectrum as well.
Well, look at bipolar disorder. I mean, some of the greatest artists out there. I mean, Robin Williams, Van Gogh definitely had a mental illness going. There was God, what was his name? The artist that killed him, the writer that killed himself. Gosh,
that's a lot. That's a
long list.
I mean, the one that was in
the
Florida Keys. What's his name?
It's still probably a long list.
Are
you thinking of
Ernest
Hemingway?
Hemingway is a good example. He had bipolar. And that's the thing, is that sometimes it's
when he was a raging alcoholic too,
I was going to say.
got in
Well, again,
fights and stuff like that.
It's a part of the illness because you've got that sort of thing.
Exactly.
But a lot of times there's a great amount of productivity, but unfortunately with that comes the lows, and then you got some terrible things that come about. In this case, Dan Aykroyd is
as we've learned, and as we've learned from Mel Gibson, having bipolar disorder and a substance abuse problem and a history of it, those do not make for a good combination.
Not all the time. Well, they don't make it for a good combination for the individual or their family, but sometimes in relation to the art, it can translate. Like, for instance, Robin Williams is a good example. He used to do cocaine before his shows because that would trigger his a manic episode, and that would be how he managed to make his gains. I wouldn't be surprised if John Kerry isn't bipolar. Not John Kerry, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
John Kerry, maybe too.
Jim Carrey has depression, not specifically bipolar, from what I know. And actually, Robin Williams said that when he took cocaine, he actually got really, really quiet. And I assume it was probably to try to kind of, because he was so extreme with his
he was ADD
mania and everything
most of the time.
Well,
yeah, but I think that's
manic a lot of the time, but the highs and lows tend to be problematic.
Yeah,
and
well, but
with
it swung him completely the other way, is what I mean.
And the other thing that comes about it is that with bipolar, all you have to do is have one manic episode to be bipolar, and that's that comes from somebody who diagnoses people for a living.
I
enjoy doing that. Yeah.
No, I know actual bipolar people, and they're, when the mania is going on, it's pretty intense, from what I've seen.
And everybody, just like anything else, everybody is different. There is no one fits all when it comes to bipolar, autism spectrum, anything. It's all different, just because people are all different, and that's what makes it interesting. But it does make for remarkable productivity.
Well, and it's inspiring when you see somebody like a Dan Aykroyd or somebody able to leverage whatever the good side of their condition, because again, like we mentioned with bipolar, it can be an extremely debilitating thing when it's not managed properly, but then the highs of it, when someone is in that state, they can be very productive, or can be very
the best
whatever it is. Same with, like, if someone is on the spectrum.
The most amazing thing about humanity is the ability to adapt. That's how we've managed to infest the entire planet in our way. But that's what makes us stand out from everything else, and that includes things like because once we understand what we're working with, then we can if we work with the right way, we can take it and use it to our advantage. Jordan Nash has, I think he's passed by this point, schizophrenia. But brilliant mind, managed to figure out how to, when he finally figured out that it clicked in his head that yes, there is a problem. He managed to utilize his gifts in tandem with his symptoms in order to create some amazing things like game theory, which is one of the theories that many people, economists, are still using to this day. So it's probably one of the few things that actually trumped Adam's theory of economics. But I think we were getting a bit too deep into that. So why don't we talk a little bit more about the music? We won't talk long because we talked about it earlier. I think the word that y'all had beforehand was that it was forgettable, but I disagree. I think that there was a lot of enjoyable things. First off, for Jacob,
it was not unenjoyable.
Your category of what was it?
Use of music and film.
Yes, I thought they did an excellent job with that, especially with that dance scene at the end. But also on top of that, I think that they had some amazing themes that conveyed. I mean, you got the themes for the raccoons. You got the themes for Dan Aykroyd's character. Those are memorable themes. I can hear them in my head when I think about the characters. I mean, come on. When you think about the raccoons, come on. Don't you hear the theme playing in the background in your mind?
Sort of. I
Yeah.
know they had a very distinct theme. I haven't seen the movie over 100 times, so I haven't memorized the score. But
66 times.
Well, in the movie in my head with the raccoons as the main character, I want their theme song to be something like Straight Outta Compton or something.
Right.
Anybody else have any comments on the music?
Well, I thought the music was pretty good.
Yeah, it was effective.
Yeah.
I like the opener. I like the Land of a Thousand Dances. I mean, I did like. I mean, they had Sly Stone as hot in fun in the summertime in there somewhere. I guess they had Paul Bunyan Love by Texas Ritter in there. So that's kind of cool. But I don't know. This is kind of a landmark film to me of comedy. To me, a modern day comedy.
So why don't we talk about production value?
Oh, I thought it was great.
I think, and a lot of the times we talk special effects, but I really do think that we should change it to production value, because a movie is a heck of a lot more than just the special effects when it comes to that, because you also have the scenes, the costume design, the makeup, but also just the setting itself. And in this movie, the setting was key.
Mm-hmm.
I love the bar. I love the Paul Bunyan restaurant with the like big old like pieces of wood that they use as menus. I love those pieces of design.
I did too. And for what it's worth, it did represent the atmosphere of the Paul Bunyan restaurant. One of the things that I remember as a kid going to that Paul Bunyan restaurant here in Wisconsin, one of the things that was always prevalent is you could not take a doggy bag home.
Oh,
you could not, because that way they stuck to their pioneer rules, because when things were pioneer times, you ate what you had there, and then you didn't take nothing home.
No, I want to go. I need to go to the Paul. Okay, if we ever get to Wisconsin together as a group, we need to all get together to the Paul Bunyan restaurant and demand the old 96er that they're keeping in the and
Do you think if this resort was in rural Washington State, that it might have turned into Twin Peaks? Because that had a hotel and
Maybe
the lodge, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. I mean, when it comes to David Lynch, you never know what he took inspiration from. For all I know, he saw the movie and said this looked pretty cool. And again, this was not a unknown film. It was a comedy that was around. I know a lot of people who know John Candy who know this film.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised at how many people here had not seen the film when it came to it. But which is very different from my last one, like Stooge Mania. I was not surprised. I would have been surprised if people had said they had seen the film. Dark Dungeon surprised me with how many people had seen it. But it's but again, I was surprised, but I hope that you all enjoyed this particular one. I feel like this is my choice, even though it's technically not, because we listed every John Candy film, and this one got into.
I enjoy this film every time I see it. To me, I've seen the vacation films, and to be honest, I feel like this is John Hughes' best film.
Well, much like the film itself, and Dane, what he was talking about earlier, is I hope that I was able to share a little bit of the joy that I felt with this film with all of you.
Very good.
Well, that's what this show's all about, right?
Right.
Exactly. So, any other things before we hit favorites?
No.
Nope.
All right. Well, why don't we hit favorites? Why don't we start with? Well, let's start with Jake since we ended with Jake last time. What
Okay.
was your favorite scene?
The scenes with the raccoons. I mean, there were a few others. There were a few others that I liked a lot. But I just love the stuff with the raccoons, and especially again that one line where they were talking about humans are not the cleanest species on the face of the earth. I just love that, especially coming from raccoons, because everyone thinks they're, there's dirty animals that dig in the trash and whatever. It's like, no,
They wash their food.
They do. They wash their hands.
How about you, Forrest?
As Robin Williams said, tying it back into Robin Williams, as he said with the raccoons, they have their little jazz paws, and he made the joke about people who are recycling and that kind of stuff, because of course raccoons get in the trash, and he was imagining the raccoons talking. He's like, "What the fuck is this shit? What are the hefty bags of life that used to feed an entire fucking family?" He's like, "I don't know why I made the raccoons Irish, but it works."
Well, let's see. Forrest, what's your favorite scene?
I have to agree on the raccoons.
And you, Roger?
The true stars of the movie.
That's easily the bear shoot scene.
Bear shooting scene. Very good. And you, Dane?
Raccoons all the way.
How about you, Dave?
There are so many small moments in this film, to be honest. But I have to say my favorite scene out of all of it, well, one of them is the bear shooting at the ass. That's priceless. But I love it when Dan Aykroyd turns to the chef and is like, "Come on, he's eating all the meat. What more is there? It's just fat and gristle." And he's like, "Uh-huh."
Well,
and they show the gristle there, and John Candy is looking at it like, "Oh." He's already puking in his mouth. So
the raccoons, of course, is an easy one for me, but I particularly love the bat scene. I don't know why it just sticks with me, especially since I have that actual anecdote that comes with it, with us actually having to deal with that same thing in a similar way. It was still it's still funny, and a funny memory with my parents and grandparents trying to capture a bat.
I do have to agree that the opening of that scene where you have them coming in wearing those ridiculous outfits was pretty great.
when they come out in their pajamas and they're like, "Well, why don't you go in there?" And he's like, "Okay, I'll go." I don't understand what's all this. This, and he goes in, and the bat flies towards him, and he comes right back out, and he's like, and they're like, "Well, what's your problem?" It was a slightly bigger bat than I thought.
It buzzed me. It buzzed me. With big, sharp, pointy teeth. Well, with that being said, I guess we'll go on to outros. Why don't we start with Roger? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how we can catch what you do online.
Well, basically, I've been, of course, I sell cars for a living now. I did have a technical background with the Air Force, with aircraft repair. These days, I like building computers, going on a bit more on Facebook, where I developed this group called Animazing Collections and Company. Is where anybody that likes collecting anime figures and manga and related items are welcome to join and discuss with the other collectors.
Awesome. How about you, Forrest?
All right, Forrest Bennett, based in Long Island, New York, a independent film producer. Also appear on a vlogcast called Script Club, where we do dramatic table readings of unproduced scripts. And I also recently acted in a short film that I'm looking forward to sharing with everyone when it's ready to come out, when it's ready to be released.
Heck yeah. Jake?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake. I am a movie, anime, film, media collector fan here in Central Virginia. I'm the co-host on SeptumSin versus the World on YouTube. And we had a pretty fun discussion a couple weeks back about Beck Manjoli and Chop Squad. I know we're working on our big awards show for the end of the summer-ish, and that should be a lot of fun. 2020 films getting their proper due, hopefully. Meantime, I am much busier than I would prefer to be at multiple jobs, one of which is a nursery that I am trying to get up and running. And so, good times.
All
A
right.
nursery for human babies or for plants?
For plant babies.
For human plant hybrid babies.
No, not
Now
one
we're
of those.
Tended to by talking raccoons that have to fight off a vampire bear to protect the plant babies. Now you got a movie.
So, how about you, Dane? Well, what's up with you?
What is up with me? Good question. Well, I'm Dane Kyle, independent filmmaker out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Got a channel, Indie Horror Film Creative, that I am a part of, although I haven't done anything with it for quite a while. Largely because I've been busy with screenwriting and with getting some opportunities together. A friend of mine wants me to fly out to LA for a weekend to shoot her music video for her band, which would be pretty exciting. I've talked about the outline that I put together for it, so we're just trying to hash out the details of the production. But my hope is that more of these things will manifest themselves, and the next thing can lead to the next thing.
You're out in LA. You should hook up with What Movie One and do a video together. That would be like a cool compilation.
That would be cool.
So I'm SeptumSin, a SeptumSin versus the World. Of course, we love physical media and all things related to physical media. We do pickups and new release videos so that you can tell what's coming out on Blu-ray, DVD, and 4K for your information if you're going to be doing your hunting. Of course, we do extra stuff here and there. We're entering our final part of the Alan Wake playthrough series that me and my wife had gone through. We never finished the game, but at least that's the final part that we recorded before we just started, playing it. Now, of course, we had a wonderful discussion on Beck, but of course, our Spandex Heroes series continued as we solved a murder mystery. And if you all are interested in not only learning about Spandex Heroes role-playing game, but also enjoy watching people role-play ridiculously, you can enjoy that. But I also try and help with Inside Movies Galore. I help Dave with all the crowd control, and this time, of course, John Candy Month continues as we move to the most popular of the votes, which would be Mel Brooks's Space.
Yes.
Some fun stuff coming up next week. So I'm going to hand this.
Space. Don't mess around with the space balls.
Why don't I go ahead and just out of curiosity, though, how many people here have not seen Spaceballs yet? All right. Well, that's
good answer.
That's a much better answer than I received for this last one. So that's going to be awesome. So Dave, I am handing this back to you to finish us off.
fine, ludicrous speed. No, just kidding. My name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for joining us on this escapade into the great outdoors with this fantastic movie. At least I thought so. I love talking about movies. Love talking about it with you guys. So thank you for enlightening me on your thoughts and views on it. And I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on about my own video pickups and my own video reviews and stuff like that. So this week yet, catch me and my buddy Boris as we go on and talk about the End of Days tomorrow. So catch us talking Doomsday films for you. Last week we did what was it? This Is the End. So
awesome.
That was pretty fun. So if you get a chance to check out that talk, go right ahead and find it on the Delusions of Grandeur channel. And I'm looking forward to going into space next week. So get ready to for another exciting discussion that we have here planned. So thank you for listening, and keep an eye out for any of those bald bears out there.
Good night and good news.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.